Hey everybody, it's Phil Strizula from Select Software Reviews. Today we're going to be having essentially a masterclass on employee referrals, getting into the nitty-gritty of, kind of why we want to do this, but also how do we do it? How do we do it really effectively from somebody who's an expert? Nasser from Intrro, do you mind just sort of giving your own introduction, sort of your path and how you became an expert in this area of talent acquisition?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Phil. My name is Nasser. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Intrro. Intrro is an employee referral platform, and my background is within recruiting. I practiced recruiting in a variety of companies and regions for 10 years, helping mainly tech companies grow. And it was a genesis of seeing an employee who was hired via an agency join the company, who knew one of our existing employees, that helped spark this journey into employee referrals. And delighted to spend this time with you today.
That's awesome. Let's start with a basic one. Why are employee referrals important?
Yeah, I mean, it's generally accepted that employee referrals are the most preferable and effective form of hiring. In my opinion, I think we can kind of take a step back and see where recruiting has its inefficiencies and where it can be hard. It's often described as broken, and I think it's down to information asymmetry. Recruiting can't tell which candidates are strong. Candidates can't tell which companies are a good fit for them. So the status quo is that companies can ignore applicants, and then recruiting attempts to target the market with a lot of automation and templated messages in a cold, outbound way. And that often leaves candidates numb. We all know when we're being targeted with a templated message. And where I think employee referrals plays a part is that often the employee is the trusted representative between both the company and the employee. And for that reason, that trust can enable a establishment quickly of productive social dynamics, which compound over time and result in higher performance, cheaper hiring processes, faster hiring processes, higher retention, higher quality overall.
That's great. I guess what's the flip side of that? Like, what are the potential like risks or pitfalls of employee referral programs?
Well, I think in the first instance, the risk is fairly low. Some of the world's best organizations historically and today, like name the companies such as Google, such as Facebook. Facebook was up to 60%. Google were trending at 50% of total hires for a long time. Snowflake is at around 50% today. So for those reasons, employee referrals is incredibly impactful and good for the business. Where you start to creep over, I think the common understanding here is around 30 to 40%. You can get into waters with lack of diversity, whether that's social diversity, whether that's ethnic or gender diversity. Folks say that you can end up recruiting people like yourself. And I think that's an area which we can discuss on how to prevent that from happening, but it's certainly something which you shouldn't rely entirely on employee referrals, but it should be a significant component of your hiring sources.
And why does the diversity problem emerge when you start getting into that like 30 to 40% range?
When you hire more than 30 or 40% from employee referrals.
Oh, got it. It's the opposite. Okay. So more referrals can lead to this diversity problem, or like is hiring like. If you already have a diversity issue, then this can potentially perpetuate it.
Yes, exactly. But I think that we're going in a directionally trending positive line. And what I mean by that is companies, particularly in metropolitan areas, societies as a whole are becoming more diverse in metropolitan areas. And as long as you're intentional with your positioning on what the business objectives are and what your hiring objectives are, then treat your employees like adults and they will act as such. So if you want diverse referrals, all you have to do is ask for them. Sometimes that's often overlooked.
Awesome. How do you, I guess, speaking of sort of asking, like, how do you build a culture of referrals?
Yeah, great question. I think first and foremost, I think we all have to recognize that the economic picture has meaningfully changed. It's often cited to me when I'm speaking to customers and just talking to the market that it's often that HR is reverting back to the mean, where it's been traditionally under-resourced. And the last few years, frankly, money was free, or at least considered as such. And now resources are tight. Companies have to get fit and focus on the fundamentals. So that's focusing on profitability, revenue, reducing risk. And as referrals can be recognized as such as faster, better, cheaper, staying longer, ensuring that number one, you have a referral champion within your business is the first step. Without somebody who is accountable for its success, and having a champion who can be responsible for reporting data back to the business and enable course correction, you're going to struggle. So ensuring that there is somebody who's a champion within the business and that they can get leadership buy-in is the first step. And then that person can conduct the initiatives or be responsible as the point person to audit your employer brand and make sure that you're a good place to work. Starting with a good place to work, if you have some issues there, then you should focus on that first, rather than trying to encourage employee referrals. So speaking to the business, learning about what the employees like and don't like about working for the company and where you can improve. And that includes looking at the website, looking at the social aspect, the social media aspect as well. And then after you've completed those tasks, you can go and build in a muscle, if you were, with regards to new employee onboarding, informing them of how important it is for referrals and taking referrals from new employees within the honeymoon period, which is usually the first 60 to 90 days, and setting the expectation of when new requirements come up, it's important to start referring. More often than not, the problem with employee referral programs is the lack of awareness. And as a result of the lack of awareness, because we're all busy and your co-workers are actually doing jobs that they've been hired for, there is a lack of employee engagement. And as a result of that, there is a lack of results.
Got it. I guess another thing that comes to mind is incentives. What role does incentives play? And is there any sort of like data we can look at to understand how incentives play a role?
Right. So just to follow my last point there, the data suggests it's not the nominal amount of money that moves the needle on high quality referrals and referral hires as overall. The data suggests that the most effective way of motivating your employees is to recognize them referring for their work and making it public. Google have I'd say one of the leaders within this space, and they've published reports with their experience on increasing the referral bonus significantly for certain positions. And I think your listeners will also have felt this experience. Whilst this may increase the overall volume of referrals, it doesn't actually help with quality. And perhaps much like a product launch or launching a new website, you might get a spike in visitors, it goes back down, and then it reverts back to the status quo. So the way that you can think about incentives is to perhaps think about gamification, competition, rewards, making leaderboards, making it public, recognizing efforts, informing folks on a quarterly basis who is doing well. And with regards to bonuses, usually to answer your question directly, range in the US between $1,000 and $5,000 US. That's what we've seen. And I think if you have the bandwidth, something that's often overlooked is to ask your co-workers on what they want and then bake that into the process. And another way of thinking about incentives is to reward behaviors. We're all living in an economy which is instantly gratifying us, and providing smaller incentives that move the needle on the most important metric, which is usually a qualified referral, will help with the overall referral program and build momentum over time.
Got it. Interesting. So it sounds like in that like 1 to 5K range, like it actually doesn't matter if it's 1,000 or 5,000. It's more important to evangelize who's actually doing this and who's seeing results.
Absolutely.
Are there any other sort of best practices to empower this employee referral process?
I would say the best practice is to perhaps feed on this overall theme, which is constantly promote it, make sure its people are aware of it. We know that more often than not, the best talent is not looking for roles, and your employees are busy and not innate recruiters. So empower them as much as you can, because even small activities by your employees can result in largely very impactful behavior. So provide them copy for outreach, provide them reasons to go and reach out to their co-workers, meaning provide the information that can make their jobs easy. And you can also go into perhaps more proactive approaches with referral jams and sourcing sessions. They're very effective and can create a sense of teamwork and prevent recruiting from feeling like they're in silos. Bringing your hiring manager and having some sort of best practice when doing the debrief with regards to the roles and the weekly check-in, and going through networks, asking for introductions, all of these are worthwhile initiatives. In addition to that, another study from Google on employee referrals suggested that asking more specific questions, and this is called an aided recall. So instead of saying, hey guys, we're looking for software engineers, it could be, we're looking for software engineers in Amsterdam. Who are the best people that you know with Node.js experience? And perhaps prompting the employee to think of, and go back into their memory and make those referrals.
Can you talk a little bit more about this recruiting jam? What is a recruiting jam, and how do you set one of these up? Or a referral jam, sorry.
Yeah, recruiting jam, referral jam, sourcing party. What it is an event. It can be held remotely or in an office. And the event is orientated towards a specific goal of hiring for a profile or a number of jobs. And then you can invite your employees to attend. And the objective of this invitation and event is to make it fun and engaging for your employees. Otherwise, they won't come. So that you can provide snacks, you can provide music, pizzas, and during that time together, you can inform them of what the company and department's objectives are with regards to hiring. And after you've informed them about what the scope of the hiring is and the objective, you can share with them a Boolean string of the key competencies and skills within this profile. And then the employee can look through their network on LinkedIn of people that suit that criteria. And then you can host a Google Sheet or some sort of spreadsheet and create a sense of gamification and competition between either individuals or departments. So you could do this one-on-one, where there will be one winner for the most number of referrals submitted within a specific amount of time within that event. Or it could be department versus department, where you collect the points of the people within the department, and they'll be friendly competing against people within another department. And at the end of the session, there will be a number of leads that have been submitted, people that suit that criteria who your employees recommend. And you can ask a question to your employees. Are you prepared to reach out to this person? And if they know them well enough, they can mark yes, and that can be a legitimate referral, which in addition to the points earned during this referral jam, if successful and in accordance to your referral policy, can enable them to be rewarded. Or perhaps they're not comfortable reaching out, but they are marked as a high performer, then that's a lead, and then a recruiting team can reach out. And you can even ask one more question is, are you comfortable if I mention your name or not? And then the collection of those points to motivate certain behaviors at the end of that event, you should have a load of referrals and a load of high quality leads. And then you can keep your co-workers updated based on the progress of who's been reached out, who's at interview stage. You can do this within your applicant tracking system. And then lastly, the winner of those rewards, once you've accumulated the points, could be lunch at your local restaurant within your town.
Got it. Nice. I love it. It's a good playbook. And I feel like something like that is a great way to supercharge these efforts. You mentioned earlier about diversity and sort of asking people for diverse candidates. Are there any other tactics here to make sure that we don't fall into that pitfall of, we get referrals of 50% of hires and we sort of wake up one day and say, hey, maybe this isn't the best thing?
Absolutely. So I'd say, to repeat what I said earlier, the first way to get more diversity through referrals is just ask and make sure it's aligned to the business needs. The second is ERGs, or employee resource groups. If you have them within your organization, then you ought to leverage them. So that could be female or underrepresented groups, whether you have Latin or African American or others. You can tap the networks by asking them for specific referrals in accordance to the policy and the groups which you have. Another way of approaching it is asking for leads and not referrals. So similar to what I was mentioning with regards to the referral program, a referral could have connotations of a lot of weight. So who are the potential people that that you recommend? Perhaps you're not comfortable in reaching out for whatever reason, but who are those persons? And the recruiting team can reach out. And lastly, you can go, if you do not have employee resource groups, go to your underrepresented groups and communities within the company and ask for diverse referrals and be quite explicit with that.
Awesome. Great advice. How do you, once a candidate's in the system here, how do we make sure that we're providing a good candidate experience?
Yeah, great question, and something that's absolutely key to the success of a referral program is to implement SLAs and hold the recruiting team accountable to it. And what I mean by an SLA is, so I mean, 48 hours preferably once a referral has been received within your applicant tracking system, that you action it. Now that action can be defined as providing feedback to the employee if rejected, or scheduling an assessment or providing feedback to the referred candidate. But that first and foremost is, I'd say, absolutely critical, because that will lead to dissatisfaction not only on the candidate experience side, but also for the employee, who will be reluctant to refer any more people in the future. The benefits of employee referrals is that if done right, your candidates will have the best experience. They will feel like VIPs. They're being introduced into the recruiting team and they have an insight into the business, not only into the hiring process, but into your actual business, what it's actually like working there. But overall, to ensure a smooth candidate experience, communication is key, being prompt, and speaking collectively within the recruiting organization without implementing any biased practices. Notice that if your employees are referring candidates, that you may want to consider them prioritized over other sources. But that feeds back into the SLAs, which I was referring to earlier. And then lastly, ask feedback from the candidate. Once they've been in that process, try to get a score. Some ATS systems provide this as a way of actually gathering feedback and learning what could be improved and then course correcting in the future.
Do you have any key metrics that you track?
Yes. I think overall employee engagement rate is one of the most important metrics to track, because it's a leading indicator, not a lagging indicator. So you can, of course, look at the total number of employee referral hires made year to date or from whatever date. You can have a look at employee referral applications as well, and then see how that trends with your overall conversion rates. It ought to be your highest converting hire. If it's not, then perhaps you have to look into how you're promoting these jobs, who's participating. Another really interesting and often overlooked metric to track is whether your referral program follows the Pareto principle, meaning, are 80% of your referrals being submitted by 20% or less of your employees? What that will demonstrate is that you do not have an inclusive referral program. Many organizations have this, where you have a small group of highly engaged employees, which is great, but they're responsible for most of the submissions, most of the hires, and that could lead to issues relating to diversity. And
Yeah.
in addition to that, yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, so in addition to that, the important thing is that you should be measuring it and then reporting back to the leadership about how this is tracking against the goals and objectives that you set for the year and for the quarter.
That's great. I think it's interesting that the Pareto principle is sort of a negative here, because I would imagine that you probably do have, 10% of people that participate are driving the majority. And so the fact that that's actually, a danger zone means that it doesn't have to be the case, which is wonderful, because it's a great way to engage everybody, to reward everybody, recognize everybody, and then also build the networks in a diverse way. My last question is just, what do you think is the future of employee referrals?
I think that the future ought to look a lot easier for people to do it. It's of course a really important source of hire. I feel passionate about it, as you can see, and I think that recruiting needs to remain more human. I think we shouldn't be relying on information that can be scraped online and messages that can just be sent by an AI to candidates. We are going to be probably suffering from diminishing returns on response rates and overall engagement if we just completely outsource responsibility of where the superpower of recruiters lie is building relationships and engaging talent over time, and enabling your employees to do that in an easy way is the future. So automating it so for recruiters so that they can spend less time pushing it sometimes can feel like a boulder being pushed up a hill with constantly trying to promote and announce. And I think automating the awareness part, as we've mentioned, that leads to more engagement, that leads to more recognition, and then you can also automate even the rewards and the sense of competition that can be developed as well. And then on the employee side, the future looks like making it easy for them to refer. Make it fun, make it ridiculously easy so that they don't have to think. They see people who match your jobs, refer those people to the business, help them get paid, and prevent them following up and asking those questions which recruiters hate, which is, when am I getting paid? Or how do I know this person suits the job? If you can remove those questions where it's administrative and back and forth, those certainly can be automated, and keeping it so that recruiters can spend their time speaking to candidates, selling the proposition of their company ought to be the direction that we should be going in.
That's awesome. The future is bright. Nasser, thank you so much for spending time with us. If people are interested in learning more about yourself, your business, employee referrals, what's a good way to get in touch?
You can check me out on LinkedIn or head over to intrro.com.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks, Phil.